What's up, Breakthrough Success listeners? Mark Berry, the podcast and virtual summit launch coach here. And one of the things that you have to master to be a better leader, to be a better success story is authenticity. And by mastering this, you become a leader. And it's also something that allows you to benefit every area that you're working on. So we're going to be talking about this in this episode of Breakthrough Success. Our guest who joins us today, she works with leaders, business owners, and passionate individuals who want to take charge of their goals. Her background is in senior leadership roles in the media, in marketing, as well as across the telco and finance industries. Our guest now works with clients all over the world and is recognized for her leadership training, as well as her pragmatic approach to business and life. Our guest who joins us for this episode of Breakthrough Success is none other than Lynda Tregoweth. Lynda, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mark. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Lynda, I'm so happy to have you on Breakthrough Success, and authenticity is such an important topic. I'm wondering if you could share with us how could we become more authentic and what exactly does that mean? Because I feel like some people are not sure how to approach it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really big question, isn't it? But I guess for me, what that means sort of took me back, and I've always been really focused on my purpose and really looking at, even from a very early age, of making sure that what I was doing was helping others, but also keeping in check with myself, So the authenticity part here in Australia, I think, is really interesting at the moment, working with lots of different companies, and, they talk about the focus being on employee engagement, but actually the gap between employees and leaders is really, really big. Leaders are often managing customers and managing focus, their focus on performance and numbers, but the people focus is not there. So then you get these people who are sort of working at different pace and different views and coming at it from the same goal perspective, but what's sort of been lost is the middle ground of how do we actually talk to each other as people? How do we actually see each other? Do we actually have a meaningful conversation? That means that I get to see you. And even through the rounds and rounds and rounds of redundancies that most organisations over here go through, and I'm pretty sure it's the same in the States, that we kind of lose sight of what we need in our community to be individuals that just happen to work together in a company and, actually occasionally talk to each other in a proper way. I think, that then has a big flow-on effect to how we are with our relationships. And, and these days our network is much bigger than just our backyard and what's right in front of us. We're meet people from overseas, and a lot of my clients are actually based all around the world. So I get to see and feel what they need. So it's kind of fascinating. I think it comes back to your true self. What do you need as an individual?
And one of the interesting things that you point out is that our networks are much bigger than we realize. I mean, with social media, with all connections, followers, things like that, we know people all around the world. Some of us know more people all around the world than others, but the idea is we have such big networks that we don't really realize. How do you suggest we tap into our networks in a way that, we reach out to like our entire network instead of just some people, and doing so in an authentic way?
Yeah, that's a really good point too. I think you've really got to start with yourself and do the internal work before you really reach out to others. I've met some really amazing people in the last 12 months. I've really upped my sphere of my reality around interacting with people. I was a little bit afraid of social media and getting myself out there. And then I realized, as a leader in different organizations, as a leader for myself and my relationships, my friendships, that being consistently true to who I am required me getting to know myself again, and in creating a bit of fun around it, like, not actually taking myself too seriously, but actually really tapping in and starting to have a bit of playtime with myself. And that I mean, finding out the things that I really love doing, things that I might not have done once before, utilizing things like social media and actually finding some really interesting people to talk to and tap into, meant that it actually helped raise my vibration and my frequency around that stuff, and I had a much deeper connection. But it always starts with yourself first. And I think it's quite common. You know, I have a lot of friends that say, "Oh, you know, you're doing amazing things," and we're seeing all these things on social media. I don't post a whole lot on social media, but what I am is a champion of the things that I love. So I'll only post about things that I truly, truly love, and not for show. It's just purely being a cheerleader for myself and other people. And they're saying, well, we want to live vicariously through you, which is an amazing intention. But how great would it be if we could all do that for ourselves, you know? Just be a champion of yourself and get yourself out there and do those things that really light your fire and be that true leader for yourself. And then you're able to have really inspiring, you know, conversations, and they're much deeper because you know what you need, and you know that you can then tune into people who have the same needs, and it's much richer.
And I mean, one of the things that really seems to come up with authenticity, I think we were hinting at it a little bit, is this idea of reflection. And we reflect on who we are, reflect on our ideas, we reflect on what we want to champion. And I do like the word champion, like championing around a certain concept or a certain belief you have, because it's like you're taking this thing really seriously. It's not just some casual thing. It's like you are really passionate in that area. So I definitely love that idea. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on reflecting to figure out our authentic selves and how we can better do that.
Yeah, you know, that's really important too. And you'll hear people talk about meditation and you know, and being one quite singularly focused on what it is that they do, which is fine. And I think it depends on the individual. But, you know, I've had some really big life defining moments in the last 5 years, and certainly within the last year, that's made me think about a whole bunch of things. And what I've realized is my capacity for internal reflection means that I truly tap into the things at the right time that are meaningful for me. Yes, meditation is one of those things. I've studied Reiki and I love that, and got an awesome Reiki teacher who is based in he's based in near Amsterdam in the Netherlands. Travels all around the world. He's great. I've got friends who study Reiki as well. Then we've got, you know, things like your fitness and your wellness and what you feed yourself with, the nutrition. And for me, it's a whole kit and caboodle. It's not just one thing. So being completely mindful of what you do, who you do it with, how present you are. If you're being congruent, you know when you're not being congruent because your body tells you, and you start to get a little bit unwell or you feel like things don't fit. So for me, it's very much about a whole focus and being a cheerleader for yourself to that point. You guys had Thanksgiving, or you probably still got Thanksgiving over there.
Yeah, it's a recording, right? Yeah.
Interestingly enough, I was out and about doing some shopping last night, and one of the guys in the wine store said to me, "Oh, you know, you're doing some things for Thanksgiving because you mentioned turkey." And then he'd lived in the States for a while, and I said, "Oh no, but I actually give thanks every day anyway." And so what I realized, because they're working quite late in that particular store, was I went and bought them a little cake and left it on the counter and said thank you, because it's always super helpful. And I think those little gestures, you know, what I've realized is people get a little bit skeptical about that. I'm like, why not? Why not just do it every day? You're here, you work hard, you're helpful, you know, just the little gestures. And I think it's gratitude and that feeling of abundance makes a really big difference.
I mean, gratitude's going to really fuel you in your happiness, in your leadership, in your business growth. Gratitude is just one of those things you just keep on doing. Write down a few things you're grateful for each day. Do a random act of kindness. Gratitude will take you so far. One of the things I want to touch on is one of the things you said was be present. And I like that advice. One of the challenges, though, is that you could be thinking about future stuff like, you know, some work you have to do, some deadlines you have, and all this different stuff. So even with all this in your mind, and maybe a little bit more of a stressful situation, like future stuff you're thinking about, how can you stay more present in the moment rather than just think about those things and not really be in the present moment?
It takes practice, I think. It depends on the environment. I'd say it depends on the environment as to how good at doing it we are. In the workplace, I think there is that feeling of what's next. But what I've practiced, and it does take a bit of stickability to keep doing it, especially when you're in an environment where it is very future focused and less present, is to ask what the intention of your interaction is before you actually start it off. And I think, this comes back to some of the principles in Reiki and, probably Buddhist beliefs, the concept of what you think you become, what you feel you attract, and what you imagine you create. So I think it really comes back to what is the intention of your interaction and how can you serve the other person. But the true serving of others means that we have to put our oxygen mask on and help ourselves first. So, there is another saying, you can't help those who don't want to be helped just because you think they need to be helped, right? So you got to help yourself first. But it comes back to the intention, Mark. It's just lock yourself into the intention before you start talking, and listen first and speak last.
We have a lot more great content coming up in this episode. First, we have a quick message from our sponsor. If you are someone who feels like you've been shut out of your career, your dream path, or anything like that, my friend Julieanne O'Connor wrote a book called Spelling It Out for Your Career, which pretty much breaks down how you can get back on the path to achieving your dreams and going towards that career path. Because a lot of us, we hear these negative thoughts from other people, or we have negative thoughts around ourselves and our path at certain points. So Spelling It Out for Your Career is a book that is meant to help you get to that finish line. Julieanne was a speaker at the Wealthy Author Summit. She provided so much incredible value during that event. So anyway, Spelling It Out for Your Career will be in the show notes for anyone who wants to pick up their copy. And let us get back right into the episode.
Yeah, I love that idea of the intention, because that's going to, if you have a good intention, you're focused on serving, you're going to be more dialed into that conversation. Well, if you're not focused on serving, you're just thinking about yourself, it's going to be harder for you to truly be focused on that conversation. And that's where it's easy to get distracted by some of the stuff that you may be thinking about, which, could take you out of the present. And if you're out of the present too long, then it's like, did you really live in the present? And deep kinds of questions like that. And one of the things that I feel we should tackle is when it comes to authenticity, like really setting up like who you are, knowing who you are. Sometimes we go through changes. Sometimes there are certain opportunities that come our way that are really big, but challenge who we are, challenge our authenticity in a bad way. So how can we really stay firm to our authenticity, everything that we are and everything we want to represent, regardless of what comes our way?
Yeah, I think, that's particularly interesting, isn't it? Like if you look at how someone might be at work versus their real life, and it depends on the roles that they play in their lives. We all have different roles and different dynamics that we have that play out as to how loud our voice is. But I certainly feel that, a key strength in leadership means that you have to stand out, you have to step out and be just congruent with your true self and what you need and your voice. I think, for me, it's interesting working with people and looking internally to myself as well. My relationships is one of the hardest things is for people to feel that they can truly be themselves in all situations where their voice gets quiet. The louder squeaky wheel, if you like, at work. People have said, no, your opinion doesn't matter in some way. Or the starting point of, hey, I don't feel enough. Something happened in my childhood, whether it's just you sitting in the back seat of the car and your parents are sorting something out of the front seat and you've been told to be quiet. That seems like a pretty common one. And you get told that often enough, and it just means that over time you lose your voice a little bit. So for me, it's really in making sure that you are super calm and comfortable with whatever is going on in that particular environmental moment, for you to not have an internal dialogue of, I'm not good enough, I'm not this or that, or I wish they would just be quiet, or my opinion doesn't matter. Whatever that dialogue is, just to be neutral and quiet the voice and just listen, and then pick your sweet spot to speak up. And often that's the key moment that you're going to be heard anyway.
And it's interesting you mentioned these like little incidences that seem really small, like when you look at them, but in hindsight, they could have a really deep impact on the individual, because it's during those young years where, you know, stuff that happens to you really shapes the way you view the world and the way you live. And it is picking those sweet spots to really shine and just like say, I'm going to speak up if, you know, you've been told to be quiet or something like that. I'm wondering if you can elaborate a little bit more on how do we, because I feel like part of the authenticity is being able to look at these things that happen to us and not let them hold back who we want to be or who we truly are. So how can we get over some of these like things that seem really small but obviously have a really big impact on us?
You know what I've learned is, you know, I was in my 20s, and the first time I came across personal development was someone gave me a book to read, and it was The Alchemist. And, you know, it's often, you know, I think it was 1987 that came out, and I probably would have been maybe 19 or 20 by the time I got my hands on it. So it was around about 1989. And what I remember from that book is that there was this aha moment of, gee, you know, finding your path, being true to yourself, and just kind of keep going. But the difference is never giving up and chipping away at it. So even if you think you've got all you need, you're never going to have enough of what you need. Keep focusing and refocus, and just keep working on yourself is the key. So, you know, it's a bit like, I think, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger would say, oh, you know, now that I'm not working out quite so much, my muscles are turning into a little bit of fat. He's still pretty muscular and stuff, right? But that's a common thing. So if you don't keep working out, your muscles are going to kind of not be in good a shape as they once might have been. And it's the same thing for personal development. Also, too, you know, I'll ask you a question if I could, Mark.
Yeah.
So the things that you knew 5 years ago, could you see for yourself 5 years ago that you'd be sitting in this chair having a chat to someone like me and doing this work today?
No way. I didn't have a single podcast at that time.
So you've used probably no doubt. Well, that's right, because things have changed. Technology's changed. You've evolved. You've met different people along that journey. I would say that you've used all those building blocks of knowledge and interest to get you to where you are now. And then in the next 5 years, even the next 6 months to 12 months, is going to evolve a lot. The journey is just combined of lots of stepping stones and building blocks to get you to where you are. But the difference for you is that you accumulated those building blocks to create your level of interest in the field that you are now choosing to work in, which is really helpful. And we get to meet some interesting people through this mechanism, right? So, but the difference for you is you didn't give up. You could have gone off on a different path. You know, I've kind of gone off on different tangents, but come back to the same path all the time in different fields. So it's probably taken me a lot longer to learn around my true purpose and what that means. You know, a few years ago, my focus was just on business coaching, not necessarily leadership, and not necessarily focused on, you know, men. A lot of my clients are men because they need different things in their relationships to feel like their voice is heard. They want a safe place to be and to build their authenticity without any level of judgment, because that's a whole different need that men have, and the ability to speak up is different. So your building blocks to get you to where you've got to have been continuous, is my point. So never give up on your personal development, even if you think you've learned enough.
Yeah, absolutely love that idea. I mean, personal development, I take that very seriously. I'm on a goal to interview at least 100 people each month. And I mean, the amount I learned from just a single interview, like the one I'm doing with Lynda right now, the one you're listening to right now. I mean, the amount you learn from hosting a podcast and the business opportunities are really incredible. So personal development, definitely something you should all be doing. You're definitely doing it by listening to this episode. Another way you can do personal development is to just keep following Lynda's work, because she's definitely shared a lot of great insights in this episode. And that's just small sample size of the work she's produced. So I'm wondering if you could share with us some of the resources we could go to keep following you on your journey.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think there will be a link in your podcast, right, for my website address. But that's Lynda, Lynda Tregoweth, TREGOWETH.com. And then if you go /breakthrough, I'm actually offering you guys a session to book in with me. We can see if we can if there's a fit, and set you up with some tools to help you get going.
I'll definitely have those links in the show notes for anyone who's interested in following Lynda and her work, and definitely go to /breakthrough for that gift that Lynda's offering us. But once again, thank you so much for joining us on Breakthrough Success. It was such a pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks, Mark. It was awesome.